Hello and welcome to the Rangers Rabble. I hope everybody's well. It was supposed to be Martin today, but obviously it's me and Ash. If there is any issues, we couldn't actually pick up the sound earlier on, so it could just be that it's one of those days where things are going to go badly wrong. And in that case, we do apologise in advance. Ash, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's Friday, so very much looking forward to the weekend and the last weekend before Rangers get started what feels like properly, with the games coming thick and fast. So sorry folks, hope everyone can hear us okay. If not, I'm sure you'll let us know in the comments.
Properly with the games coming thick.
Yeah, because one of the weird things is I actually can't hear Ashley. So what I'll do is I'll just pass the questions over to her. I'll go and mute and then she can just talk, obviously. So basically, we're going to talk about Robin Proper. It looks like he's very, very close to leaving the football club and going back to FC20. We're also going to touch on Tello Asgard. So we're hoping that he might play a part tomorrow ahead of potentially playing against Panathinaikos during the week. And also, we'll have a wee look at the Middlesbrough game in general. We'll have a look at maybe who's going to come into the team. Is there anybody that can play at the weekend that might potentially, play a part in the Panathinaikos game? So we'll touch on that. We'll come to you first, Ashley. What do you make of the Robin Proper move to FC20 and him finally moving on for Rangers?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's been a long time coming. I think it was pretty evident very early on in his Rangers career that he was just the kind of guy in the wrong movie. It's difficult. He's obviously been a decent defender. You don't play in the Dutch league, and you certainly don't captain one of the bigger, in inverted commas, Dutch clubs without having something about you. But I just think very early on you could see his style just did not suit Scottish football at all. Any sort of the physicality, the directness of the game, etc., really just isn't something that suits him. And I think that's really been highlighted when you see the difference in his performances in Europe than you do domestically. I mean, domestically at times he was a bit of a bomb scare, and yet he'd go into Europe and you probably felt quite comfortable when he was starting in the European game that he could do a job. So ultimately, I'm pleased that he's moving on. I don't think it would be a good position for him to be in the squad. I don't think his wages were huge, but you just don't want people hanging around that really aren't going to be part of the manager's kind of first team plan. So I'm also pleased that the club are starting to get some people out the door, because it maybe is becoming a bit of a concern that we seem to be struggling to move people on. I think the squad's getting a bit bloated, and so hopefully this is the first of many. And ultimately, you'll go with our best wishes, but he just wasn't cut out for us, and best for all parties that I think we draw a line under it and move on.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's just because we can't hear each other. There's a bit of a gap between the two of them coming back. That's on me because I'm obviously running the pod today and I'm doing it through my phone. So it's a little bit weird. Sorry about that. Yeah, look, I think when you look at Robin, I think it's fair to say that, it's not really worked out for him at Rangers. It's been a difficult year for him. He came in to replace Connor Goldson, who did a very good job for Rangers in general. And unfortunately for Robin, it just didn't really happen for him. He probably didn't really cope with the physicality of Scottish football. He did seem to struggle in some of the bigger games as well, although he seemed to do okay in Europe, which was quite strange given that he struggled in Scotland. But I think for everybody concerned with regards to his future, it's better that he gets back to Holland. It's where he's been. He's very good in that level. And at the end of the day, sometimes moves just don't work out for players. And in this occasion, it's not really worked out for Robin Proper. And, we wish him all the best in the future. And if he gets back to the Eredivisie and does well, then, good luck to him. And probably it's a better environment for him. It's obviously a league that he's done well in. He's managed to have a level of success there playing in Europe as well. So I think from my point of view, we just move on. And I'm sure this is just the first of many moves in the coming weeks. Robin's obviously the first one to really go from the group of players that seems to be on the outskirts looking in now, in terms of the first team squad. But yeah, we'll move on to the next point. Obviously, the big thing tomorrow, and I think there's a bit of excitement around it potentially, that Tello Asgard might get his Rangers debut at Ibrox, so that's something to look forward to. Ash, what are you expecting from him? What sort of player are we expecting to see? Is he the sort of player that if he has a good 45 minutes tomorrow, we might potentially see him playing in Greece against Panathinaikos?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing for me is my understanding is he is more of a central player or a player that can play out on the left. And so it'll be really interesting to see what Martin does. If he does, play tomorrow, the chances are he's going to be in and around the squad on Wednesday. You'll be getting some minutes trying to get him for that. I probably don't see him starting the game on Wednesday unless he's, really recovered rapidly from the injury. I think you don't want to be taking any risks with him this early on in his career. We want him to be good for a long period of time, and also I think taking the 2-0 scoreline over to Greece is a massive help. It maybe gives us a chance to play a little bit differently next week. We maybe, we don't have to rush people back as such. Not that it's not going to be a difficult game, but we're maybe set up well to counter-attack on Panathinaikos, because they're going to have to really come and play, and I think that will play right into our hands. But no, I think he's a really exciting one. I think he's a high-quality player. A number of clubs were sniffing around him, and thankfully we got that one over the line. So I think that he'll offer a threat from midfield, something that we've lacked for a long time. He'll create chances for other people, and he's just very sort of direct and progressive. I think that he'll give us a different dynamic in something that we've lacked. But to kind of highlight it again, it will be interesting to see what Martin does with him, because I thought the central three played well on Tuesday, so I can't see him massively changing that. And obviously out on the left, you've got Curtis Finlay, who's done well. You've got Gassama, who came in and showed in sort of the 10-15 minutes that he had that he's a quality player. So where Asgard fits in as part of that puzzle is going to be interesting to see as it develops. But no, we want as many bodies as possible for next week. So I hope he gets some minutes tomorrow and we get a chance to see him make his debut in Athens.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm actually quite excited to see Asgard play. Obviously, you can speak to people and you obviously try to get a feel for the player in terms of what he's going to bring to the team, what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are. And it was interesting, obviously, I was at the academy game yesterday, kind of talking to a couple of the guys, and apparently I think it was Don Goodman had done a piece on Tello Asgard, and he was saying that he was quite surprised that he chose to sign for Rangers because of the interest that was in him down in England. So whether that's maybe just the sway of having Russell Martin and how he wants to play, it's obviously hard to gauge these things. We're not privy to those personal conversations, but I think sort of having Gassama there, having Asgard, I think that's a lot of attacking threat. It's certainly players that can make a difference at the top end of the pitch, especially against teams that are going to sit in against us, which we know they are. I mean, like, we're not silly enough to know that teams will come to Ibrox and play that way. Some teams will even play at home that way against us. And I think Russell Martin will probably get quite an eye-opener against Motherwell in the first game of the season when they're a big physical unit. I'll come to you, Ash. I mean, like, just on Asgard alone, if he does well tomorrow and he has a good 45, 50 minutes, is that enough for him to come into the starting 11 ahead of the game during the week against Panathinaikos?
I think it's a good question. For me at the moment, I think the left position really is Curtis Finlay's or Gassama. Now, Gassama, as I've mentioned earlier, I thought came on and showed very quickly what he's going to bring to the team in terms of dynamism, etc. I think we've got a real gem on our hands, which really echoes what we heard from fans of Sheffield Wednesday, obviously, who were disappointed to see him go. So I just think that position's his. I think, just to kind of digress onto Curtis Finlay a bit, we obviously rightfully highlighted his contribution with the goal, which came at a huge moment in the tie for us. But actually in the first half, as much as he didn't play very well going forward, or didn't get the opportunity to influence the game going forward, I thought he made some really important defensive contributions in that first half. You know, you don't ideally want your left-sided winger making sort of last-ditch tackles in and around the 18-yard box, but he had to do that a couple of times and probably saved us from, you know, potential goals going against us. So I think that's something that's probably gone under the radar with Curtis Finley's performance. So his discipline and his willingness to get back in and help defensively might put him slightly ahead of Gassama on Wednesday. That's, and also Gassama's still catching up in terms of pre-season. So I feel as though the left position probably is going to go to Finlay or Gassama, and I don't really see him changing the three of Dio, Raskin and Rothwell, because again, I think they grew into the game and complemented each other quite well. So for me, I think tomorrow's about Asgard getting some game time ahead of potentially playing a bigger role against Motherwell the weekend after. But who knows, if he comes in and he tears it up, then, you know, he maybe gives the manager a decision to make. But just given his kind of interruption to his pre-season, I would see next weekend being more of a likely starting point for him.
Yeah, look, it's a fair point. I mean, I think Finlay Curtis did really well against Panathinaikos. I don't think there was maybe a huge amount of expectation on Finlay doing that well. You know, he's still a young kid. Obviously, I've seen Finlay now for a number of years at the academy. It's been a real pleasure to watch him. You know, progress from being in the under-16s into the under-18s into the B team, and now part of the first team, and scoring that goal, which, I mean, I dropped his dad a message, and he was just saying he still can't really believe that he scored. It's still kind of weird that. I mean, it's been a bit of a surreal year for Finlay. You know, it wasn't that long ago he was still playing these games at the academy in front of probably like 50 people in some of these B team games, because it is mainly just parents and maybe a few spectators at some of these games. But he's now playing on the big stage, on the European stage. I mean, other than playing in the Champions League itself, actually playing in these qualifyings is just ridiculous, really, for Finlay, given where he was. I mean, it's just another level, isn't it? And it's something that I can only dream of that. You know, like as a young boy, if I was 16, 17, 18, having the chance to pull on that Rangers jersey and, you know, being out in a Champions League qualifier, that's just like the dream, isn't it? I mean, it's something special. In terms of during the week, I think the manager's already shown that he has a lot of faith in Finlay Curtis and that he'll continue to do that. So, you know, if Asgard, you know, sort of isn't ready to play that game, I really wouldn't have an issue with Finlay getting over there, because I know he'll work hard. I know he'll do everything the manager asks of him. And to me, that is important. I'm trying to pick up on the comments as well. Yeah, look, I think Timothy's asking, is Finlay a number 9? It's a difficult one, because when you look at somebody like Finlay, he's very much somebody that can play in multiple positions. He can play off the right side, the left side. He can play as a 10. He can drop in as a number 8. He has played as a 9, and he has scored goals as well. So Finlay's a wee bit of everything. A bit like Josh Gentles, actually. Josh is the same. Josh can play off the wing as a 10, as a 9. So yeah, look, there's certainly things there that can be looked at. Let me look here. Paul's asking as well, do you think Josh Gentles will get minutes tomorrow? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Josh got a little bit of game time. I think, you know, sort of primarily it will be a chance for Dessers and Egerman to get minutes, but I do think there is an opportunity for Josh Gentles to get a little bit of game time. I'll just try and pick up on any more comments that are there. But yeah, look, I think overall for Finlay, it was an amazing experience, but also now he's got Tello Asgard pushing him, which I think is a really good thing on a personal level. I think it'll only help Finlay get better, because he knows he needs to do more to stay in the team. Right, we'll move on to the Middlesbrough game. Just as a general point, really, is there anybody, Ash, that you're excited to see play, maybe like a Lyle Cameron? Because he's obviously somebody that I think supporters will maybe forget a wee bit about, because he's already signed quite a while ago, but certainly somebody that in Scotland, he's done really well, you know, a good amount of goals, good amount of assists. Maybe Manu Fernandez at centre-half, because obviously, you know, we are going to see him play as well. Maybe seeing Egerman starting the game, Dessers, etc. Is there anybody in particular that you're really excited to see play tomorrow?
I mean, I think when the fixtures were first announced, that this seemed like a bit of a strange one to me, to be kind of shoehorned in between, such big important games in terms of qualifiers. But I think after watching the game on Tuesday, it does make a lot of sense, because I think there's two different ways that Martin's probably going to use the game tomorrow. One, as you've touched on, I think will be to give an opportunity to some players to get some minutes in the legs, the likes of Lyle Cameron, who we've not really seen much of, if anything at all, during pre-season because he picked up that injury. And he's one that I think could surprise a few people this year. I think, he's got that goal scoring record. He's also, he heavily influenced the Dundee team and was a big part of why they stayed up in terms of the character that he showed. He got a lot of flack when he signed the pre-contract, and he just dusted himself off after a dip in form and came back and really played such a role in keeping them in the division. So it shows you that he's got a really good mentality that could be important in the dressing room. So I think it'll be good for him to build a bit of fitness before the domestic season starts. The likes of Cortez as well, I think his omission on Tuesday is a bit of a concern in terms of we've just spent £4 million on this guy. I know that he is physically behind everyone else just because he's missed almost a year of football. But he needs to get minutes because he needs to impress at the beginning of the season, given the number of wingers that I think, Martin's obviously looking to bring in. I think the other way that Martin has to use the game tomorrow is actually to give people the opportunity to push themselves into the first team on Wednesday. The likes of Igaman, who I thought made a difference when he came on. Dessers as well. Gassama is another one who I thought, when we changed the front three, there was a few opportunities there late on the game that really we could have finished the tie if we went 3-0 up. Because I do think in the first half, as a front three, we really struggled. Dowell, I don't want to have a go at the guy because I know that he runs and he gives 100%, but he's not the answer at right wing. And I really would like to see a change there for Wednesday, whether Gassama goes over to the right and you leave Curtis on the left, whether Cortez does enough tomorrow to play himself into a starting position, I don't know. And as Cammy's just pointed out as well, Bajrami is another one who I think needs game time and who needs to show quite quickly that he can be part of a first team 11, because if not, he's maybe one that you would move on. So yeah, as pre-season friendlies go, usually they're a bit of a necessary evil, but I think there's actually quite a lot of intrigue around tomorrow, and there's a lot of opportunity for people to, as I say, influence Martin's selection on Wednesday, because I think we'll see a slightly different lineup when it comes to the midweek game.
Yeah, it's funny when you actually start thinking about all the names in the squad who we've still to really get an eye on this season. I mean, I wrote down all the names the other day there, actually, the first team squad, and there was like 40 players, so It's a bit crazy. I mean, when you actually look at it tomorrow, we could literally change the whole 11 and actually change the 11 again in the second half. We've got that many players at the club right now, but it'll be interesting to see what the starting 11 is. Does he stick with the guys that played during the week and maybe give them 45 just to keep them ticking over ahead of this game on Thursday, ahead of the game on Wednesday, sorry, because at the end of the day, there still hasn't been a huge amount of football played in pre-season for a lot of these guys. So I think when you get that opportunity to play, I think it's important that there is a chance for for them to be out there and getting the legs. But then the other argument is that there's probably guys like Fernandez that need the minutes. You could argue that maybe Jefty, if there was to be an injury, might need some minutes. Barron, Rice, Cameron, Cortez. I mean, even Gassama, you could argue that maybe Gassama needs to start just to maybe look ahead to that game. You've got Dessers, you've got Igaman, who yet again needs more minutes. I mean, you sort of feel like the manager's got difficult choices because he doesn't want anybody to get injured, because we don't really need that. But there is players in the squad that need minutes if they're going to push on, because at the end of the day, we come straight back from Greece, hopefully having qualified for the next round. Then we get into a really tough game against Motherwell, which for some of the players who haven't played in Scottish football, it's going to be a real eye-opener, because it's not the same for a lot of these guys that are playing in England. Motherwell, I think, might be quite direct at times. I think they'll look to high press us and look to see if we make any errors. I mean, there's so many things for the manager to think about, and that's why, as a supporter, it's okay having an opinion, but it's very different being the manager of the football club. Ash, I mean, just looking at that quickly tomorrow, what would be your starting 11? Would it be the same team that started the game during the week, or would you look to kind of mix and match it a little bit?
It's a good question. I mean, like you've highlighted there, mindful of injuries and really mindful that we don't need that at this stage of the season. And we probably do have less minutes in the legs than normally we would have for whatever reason. That's the decision that's been made, that we're not going to have as intensive a pre-season schedule. We're obviously intensive in terms of training, etc., but we've not played that much football against opposition. So there is an element of that. I potentially would stick with the majority of the starting 11, but bring in the players that potentially might start the game on Wednesday. For example, the likes of Igaman, the likes of Dessers, the likes of Gassama. Maybe I'd bring Jeffrey in at left back because, not to be critical because it was a phenomenal result, but I thought Aidens had quite a difficult first half. I think it was pretty evident that the left-hand side of the pitch didn't function that well because the shape was a bit of a hot mess. You had Aidens cutting in because he's not naturally left-footed. You had Raskin out on the left, and you had Curtis obviously trying to make it work, and he was probably not sure where he was meant to be. So I maybe would give Jeffrey the opportunity, but other than that, I probably would be bringing in players that I think could start the game on Wednesday. And then in the second half, you want to make wholesale changes to give the likes of Cameron, Barron, Bailey, Rice, etc. an opportunity. So that would probably be my preference, just to keep some momentum going and see what these first 11 could potentially do if they are given the nod to play in the European game midweek.
Yeah, it's one of those ones, isn't it? You feel like, what is the best thing to do? Because I suppose at the end of the day, as one of the guys posted in the comments here, something could get injured in training.
Yeah.
So it can happen in the training, it can happen on the pitch, on a league game, it can happen in a cup game, it can be anything really. But I suppose the manager just doesn't want any injuries ahead of this second leg, because it would be perfect if we had everybody available. But then it sort of does look like as well that he's not going to select anybody out with the European squad. That's my gut instinct. I think it'll be the ones that are in that squad, will be the ones that will play. But it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to the game tomorrow, actually. I'm not really a huge pre-season friendly person, if I'm totally honest. I don't really enjoy them a lot of the time. I just get a bit bored. Just because they're not as meaningful as a competitive game of football. But yeah, it's another chance to see some players in action. One of the final things I wanted to touch on, and it's a little bit kind of left field now, given that it's already been confirmed, but Owen Beck has actually signed a new contract at Liverpool, and they're obviously wording it as a long-term contract before going out and loan to Derby for the rest of this season. One of the things the other day there was that people were saying, well, we'll just wait till his contract runs out and sign him then. Clearly that is not going to happen now. Liverpool have tied him down to a potentially 3, 4, 5 year deal before going on loan in Derby. Ash, do you think the left-back position is still one that we need to, to fulfil, especially maybe a starting left-back? And do we need a backup left-back because we don't want to see Aarons playing at left-back that often as well?
So the Beck one is disappointing, because I think he would have been a real asset to the squad if we were able to get that one over the line. I think my view, and this is just my gut opinion, is that the long-term contract is really just to protect their asset, because I think he was running out of contract pretty soon. So I don't really see him going in and being a first-team player for Liverpool anytime soon, or certainly being the starting left-back. They've obviously got Andy Robertson, and they've also signed, I think, Frimpong as well. So they're well covered in that area. But it makes sense why they weren't willing to take Rangers' apparent offer of 7 million, and rejecting and perhaps looking at putting him out on loan. They would only do that if they've obviously got the long-term security that he's going to be their player and they can sell him perhaps next summer. So that's a shame we didn't get that one. He would have been a good addition. I absolutely think that we do need a starting left back. I think that the first goal shows what Aidens can do when he's on the right side of the pitch, and he's confident and he's comfortable. So I certainly feel as though on Tuesday he really did struggle at times, and it's a shame to bring a player in who's got a great skill set and then not use that. But I do think our hand is kind of forced, because that left back position at the moment, there is nobody better than probably Aarons who's uncomfortable out there, because Jeffrey, I think, doesn't have the defensive discipline at this stage. I think he'll need a little bit of time to get that, and also I think you'll need a bit of coaching from Martin to play the way that he wants to play. So I would have no issue with Jeffrey being a backup, but I certainly do think that we need another starting player in there, because I don't want Ains to play the whole season on that side. I think he needs to be given the chance at right back, which then opens the question about what you do with Tav, whether you bring him inside one or whether he reverts to being a bit of a backup right-sided player. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But it's clear to me the club know that, because they were looking at Beck and they've been looking at a few others. So I would imagine that's one that we will see some movement in between now and the end of the window. And I think it'd be important for the squad to get that done.
Yeah, I think that's the big one. I mean, I see quite a few people in the comments talking about even maybe a left centre back coming in as well if we end up playing maybe 3 centre halves and 2 wing backs. I think it's clear to everybody now that there is still work needing to be done. But as part of that, we do need to get guys out the door, because the squad still is fairly large, and it's okay saying let's go and sign. And fair play to the board and to the new owners, because the wage bill must be going up, not. Because at the end of the day, we've not really moved that many players on so far, and yet we've brought in quite a number of starters who, I dare say, especially the fact most of them have came from England, so the wages straight away I would imagine would be at a reasonably good level. So it is important that we can get as many of those players who are on the books, who are not part of the manager's plans, out of the door. In terms of Owen Beck, he was somebody that really impressed me at Dundee. I thought he was a good player. Thought he had a good turn of pace. He did a lot of good work for them. He was somebody that I thought might be a good addition for us. But obviously that's not to be, and he's chose to obviously sign a new long-term deal at Liverpool. And good luck to the lad in terms of what happens for him next and in the future. But yeah, I think left back is a real position that we need to get in place as soon as possible, because at the end of the day, when you actually play at that level, it is much more comfortable to be in the left back position, isn't it? Like, to be a natural left footer. Whereas I felt sorry for Aarons at times. Everything was on his right side, and I felt like at times when we played him the ball, the press on him was very good. And the fact he's got to take the touch on his right foot instead of his left a lot, every team's going to know that. So they're going to work really hard on it. And that's really tough on him, that he's maybe not playing in his most natural position. But look, he's still a very good player. I think we saw that when he set up the second goal. Lovely close control, good feet, good ball into Egerman, who obviously gets it out of his feet. And then we obviously end up going and getting that second goal. So, yeah, really, really, really good player. Hopefully we can get more and more from him in the coming games, in the coming weeks. Right, I think that will do us for today. I would stay on a wee bit longer, but it is my wife's birthday today, and I promised to take her out for lunch. So the fact I'm actually doing this podcast right now, I've actually don't know how I've managed to get away with it without her killing me, to be perfectly honest with you. So yeah, thanks very much for everybody for tuning in. If we can get the likes up to 100, Martin says he'll do something special on the next podcast. I don't know what that means, right? So don't blame me for whatever he decides to do. Make sure you subscribe as well, because Martin keeps pushing that. And thanks very much for tuning in, guys. And also thanks very much to Ash for joining me.
Thank you for having me, and thank you folks for being with us with some of the technical difficulties. It's quite difficult, and we can't properly hear each other, so hopefully it's not been too painful. And I hope you all have a lovely weekend, and look forward to speaking to you all next week.
That's great. Right, peace out everybody, have a great day, and we'll hopefully catch you again tomorrow before the game. I'm actually going to the game, so I'm not too sure who's on. Richard, no, that's not actually going to happen, mate. I'm far too old for that now. That's well past that time. But cheers for joining us, guys. Take it easy, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Cheers.